Gambling, betting, games of chance. I hate them, but unfortunately they're ubiquitous with today's society. But the fact that they are so ubiquitous does beg the question, why is gambling so popular? Why do people engage with it so much to the point that they ruin their finances and their lives? And what should we be doing to stop that? Those are the questions that we're going to answer in today's video. Let's start with why gambling is so popular. The main reason gambling is so popular is quite simply, well, because it's fun. Psychologically, we say that this is due to what is known as uncertain or variable rewards. Those are rewards where the outcome is not guaranteed. Take a slot machine, for example, the most basic form of gamble. When you pull that lever of a slot machine, you don't know whether you're going to win big or lose. And the fact that that reward is uncertain means that when you do win, the feeling that you get in your brain, the dopamine release that your neurons emit, is going to be so much larger than if that reward was predictable. These uncertain rewards and the big dopamine releases that accompany them are a large reason why gambling habits form so strongly and why people feel like they're addicted. From a psychological, neurological perspective, people who are hooked on gambling don't have an addiction. Instead, what they really have is a very strong habit, and that distinction is important and we'll touch on why later. But first, let's look at why people engage in gambling in the first place, which I think is due to another basic facet of our human psychology, simply overconfidence. Decades of research in psychology has shown that in general, people are very overconfident. We tend to believe that we're special, that we're going to do better than everybody else, than the average, even though in reality, on average, we're average. The funny thing is though, is that this applies to things where there's literally no skill involved, games of complete chance. Take roulette, for example. In roulette, there are two colors, red or black. Now imagine a situation where you've bet on red for the last 5 times and it's been black. What are you going to say about the next time that ball is spun? Well, quite often you'll hear gamblers say something along the lines of, the last 5 have been black, so the next one has to be red. But of course, mathematically, that logic doesn't add up. Each time that ball is spun, it's an independent event, which means that it's independent of all the times that it was spun previously. So it doesn't matter if the past few times it was black or red or any color, the next time that ball is spun, your chance of winning is still 50-50. In behavioral economics, they call this the gambler's fallacy, the belief that the previous events affect the current one even though they're independent. And the world of gambling, unfortunately, is filled with little traps in our psychology because our brains are not very good at processing statistics. Take football, for example. In football, one of the most popular types of bets to make is something called an accumulator. An accumulator is when people stack multiple bets on top of each other and they have to have all of them correct in order to win. For example, somebody might guess the winner of every single game being played in the Premier League that weekend. If they get all of them correct, then they win a large amount of money. Now, of course, these people know that their chance of winning is very low, but they likely don't realize quite how low it is. Because of the way that probabilities work, when we stack multiple probabilities on top of each other, your chance of winning diminishes very quickly. However, when it comes to sports betting, it's very easy for us to convince ourselves that our chances of winning are better than they actually are. Imagine you're somebody who's a die-hard fan of football. You know all of the clubs, all the players, and you know how each team is performing that season. As a result of all of this knowledge and experience, you might think that your chance of winning the accumulator is significantly better than somebody randomly guessing. When you list off your stack of predictions that you've made for that weekend's games, you think to yourself, yes, this is a plausible story. I can see this exact scenario happening. I can imagine it in my head. And when we imagine these plausible stories in our head, we tend to vastly overestimate our chances of winning. To further take advantage of this, betting companies have recently started making some clever offers that trick you into feeling safer than you really are. For example, a lot of betting companies these days will give you an offer of something along the lines of, if only one of your predictions in your accumulator is wrong, then you'll get your money back. Offers like this lull gamblers into a false sense of security. They've provided you with another out. Even if you're only one off, you still get your money back. When in reality, the reason why these bookies can make an offer like that is because they know the probability of you even being one off your accumulator is so low that it's virtually impossible. What's more is that the way our psychology works is that if we end up being one off winning our accumulator or one off winning our accumulator, then another psychological principle kicks in, which is known as the near-miss hypothesis. What happens with near misses is that when we almost reach a goal, we end up having this false sense of encouragement, encouraging us to try again. This psychological mechanism is useful for skill-based tasks that we're trying to improve at, But when it comes to gambling and when it's a game of chance, it actually works against us. If we do an accumulator one week and end up being only one off winning it, then next week we'll feel an even greater sense of confidence or overconfidence that we're going to win that week because we were so close last time. Even though, again, the 2 weeks are completely independent of each other. As a result of all of this, gamblers tend to be very overconfident in their ability to win, like this time it'll work out for me, when in reality, the chances are still just as low as they always were. But then, that begs the question, how do we help these overconfident gamblers to gamble responsibly and be mindful of what they're doing? Well, remember when I said that gambling is more like a habit than an addiction? Well, that's a useful distinction to make because there's loads of literature on how we can help people break their bad habits and help them be more mindful of their actions. And I think the most important thing to take from that literature is not what will work, but what won't work, which is information-based campaigns. You might have heard of slogans like gamble responsibly or be gamble aware, or in the UK we have one that says, when the fun stops, stop. Well, according to a paper that was published just a few weeks ago by my former supervisor, these slogans don't work at all. When the fun stops literally doesn't stop anyone from gambling. And the reason for that is because when we have a strong habit, we're completely insensitive to new information and insensitive to motivations. Instead, people tend to act automatically and tend to ignore any of these kinds of messages. So if we can't educate people on how to quit gambling, then how do we slow them down? How do we stop them? Well, I think that we should be using proven techniques of breaking habits like adding friction or disrupting contexts. For example, one way to add friction is to slow people down, to have people stop and realize and think about what they're doing and see if they really want to carry on. Gambling apps and bookies should have cooldown times on people's accounts. Once they've been going for a while, it should automatically cool them down and put them in a timeout zone so that they can reconsider whether they really want to gamble again. At an individual level, you should try to remove easy access to gambling apps and websites. Don't have them bookmarked, don't have the app downloaded on your phone. Once you remove those things from your context, they won't act as automatic cues for you to start gambling. If there's a specific place in the house where you tend to engage in this behavior, then try not to put yourself in that situation again. Maybe it's when you're left alone at your desk with your laptop, that's when you start playing these online gambling games. Well, how about bring your laptop to the dining table and maybe that'll help disrupt your context enough so that you won't be so tempted to gamble. Those are just some first thoughts from me, some general ideas, but you get the point. The point is that information will not stop people from gambling. Instead, we need to change their environment, their context in a more significant way, because that's really what's going to break that habit. So best of luck to any gamblers watching this video. If you want to learn more about how to break habits, you can watch this video over here, which I made all about that topic. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.